Saionji Kyoichi is the butt of many jokes throughout Utena. Upon a first watching of the show, Saionji appears intimidating at first. His abusive relationship with Anthy sets him up as the first antagonist of the series. As the chairman of the Kendo Club and member of the mysterious and occult student council, the first-time viewer, like Utena herself having just entered Otori Academy, is caught by this initial air of intimidation, and might be unable at first to see him for who he truly is. While Saionji is by no means a good person, he is honest, in a world where all too often secrets can be used as weapons by others. Saionji is simple-minded and purely motivated, though his ideas of right and wrong are usually problematic. In the world of Utena, Saionji is weak, and fittingly referred to as a make inu by Toga and others throughout the series, literally losing dog in Japanese. For these reasons, Saionji is perfect to set the stage for the psychologically more formidable foes Utena goes on to encounter. Following a tried-and-true trope often used in anime, earlier antagonists are used as a point of reference for the main antagonist of the arc, to advertise the strength of the latter and drive the plot forward. In the case of Utena, as soon as the writers have finished toying with Saionji, it becomes clear that Toga is the real final boss, of the first arc, that is. Upon a second viewing, it is apparent that Saionji's initial episode is used for world building, and his weakness gives the viewer a sense of the criteria which makes a character, or actor, strong in Utena. A villain in the world of Otori Academy must be psychologically potent, which the impulsive and emotional Saionji certainly is not. His combination of outward toughness and inward simplicity is what makes Saionji essentially a comic relief character in the world of Utena. Similar to how it is often theorized that Beavis of Beavis and Butthead might not do such rotten things if he wasn't under the influence of the devious Butthead. I personally like to believe that Saionji is a good person at heart who has been corrupted by his surroundings. However, this does not fully excuse his actions. The idea that, if everyone around you is corrupt, you have no choice but to become corrupt yourself, is parodied in the character of Kozue Kaoru later on in the show, and the theme of revolution, central to many character arcs, concerns how characters attempt to overcome these corrupt surroundings. Nevertheless, Saionji, who is most easily corrupted by his surroundings, is essentially a parody of the typical Utena villain, and with this perspective, many of his appearances are best understood for their ironic comedic value. In this pilot episode of Utena Explained, I'll be focusing on episode 1 of Utena and how the setting of the show is established through the character of Saionji and otherwise. This series is meant for fans who have watched the show in its entirety at least once, if not several times, so I won't spend any more time than necessary reiterating the plot of the show besides the basic context. Also, while I have spent a lot of time watching and thinking about the show, it's always best to form your own opinions before seeking out analysis or explanations by others. I hope that these videos can provide a basis for a discussion of Utena among serious fans of the series that goes beyond a surface level. Any feedback, whether in the form of comments, blog posts, or video responses, will be much appreciated. The episode begins by introducing Utena through the lens of Wakaba, who curses her, in Wakaba's own words, boyfriend Utena for having gone to class without her. Familiar landmarks of the academy are shown in sequence, symbolic of the inherent systems and structure of the school, but that is out of the scope of this episode. Utena's character is also introduced, and we see how she is revolutionary initially in the sense that she is gender non-conforming. Finally, Utena witnesses Anthy being slapped in the face by Saionji before being stopped by Toga, and Wakaba gives an initial introduction of these three characters. Wakaba is shocked to learn that Utena doesn't know about Saionji, the vice president of the student council, so Utena figures he must be a Yumeijin, or celebrity. This reaction showcases the surface mystique surrounding Saionji's character from the perspective of an average student. an aspect of Saionji's intimidating exterior which quickly crumbles in the eyes of the viewer through his later displays of weakness. Following this exposition, we are greeted by the first student council scene of the show. The other council members are concerned by Saionji's violent treatment of Anthy, but through Toga's language it becomes clear that he is not so concerned about Anthy as a person, as he is about the Rose Bride as an object which is being misused. The Japanese used in this scene is a mix of over-formal, almost instruction book language, and informal colloquialisms. Toga confronts Saionji by beginning to say, "Chikagoro, omae no hanayome no seshikata ni shoushou mondai ga," formal language which frames the problem simply in terms of Saionji's misuse of the Rose Bride with regard to the rules and conventions of the academy. Saionji's response is, "Hanayome wa genzai, boku to rabu-rabu no joutai ni aru," a phrase in Japanese that would be akin to saying in English, "Myself and the Rose Bride are presently in a state of lovey-doveyness," which puts a supposedly romantic relationship in the most formal terms possible, the punchline being that he uses the word rabu-rabu, a very cutesy onomatopoeia for the word love. The end of the scene serves as an introduction of the duel system central to the show, with Toga's reminder that a new challenger will soon appear, and Saionji exiting as the forest of dueling looms in the background. Next, we are given a brief exposition of Udena's ring, essential as context for Udena's following encounter with Saionji. Saionji's thoughtless or even intentionally cruel disposal of Wakaba's letter, and the general infatuation Wakaba and others have for Saionji, serves to portray him as an iro otoko, a character archetype for an attractive young male popular with women, often somewhat feminine in appearance. This type is most common as a minor antagonist, some examples being Shishi Wakamaru from Yu Yu Hakusho and Duke Devlin from Yu-Gi-Oh!, though occasionally an iro otoko appears without the negative traits as a protagonist, such as Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho. In the case of an antagonist such as Saionji, his typically petty and cruel behavior cements his position as a small fry villain. Furthermore, Saionji's embrace of kendo aligns him with an outdated form of masculinity from pre-World War II Japan, adding to his image as a hopeless romantic, easily thwarted by more clever characters such as Toga. Saionji shows no remorse for his actions following Udena's confrontation, and this conflict segues into Udena's challenge, which Saionji accepts upon noticing her ring. As a prelude to the duel, we have the first Shadow Girl sequence. The Shadow Girls are a seemingly all-knowing presence as actors who are able to break the fourth wall. They discuss the upcoming duel in the forest as if they just heard about it in a rumor. Then, the girl with the bow on the right parodies the nobility of Udena's actions in fighting for her friend's sake, referring to her as Yusha-sama, literally brave one. However, the Shadow Girls leave with a warning that the forest of dueling is a world with a specific set of rules and ways of doing things, okite in Japanese, and that Udena's naive nobility might not have the end result she imagines. This warning about breaking the rules echoes the student council's previous condemnation of Saionji's actions. There's a lot to be said about the repeated sequences of the forest gate and spiral staircase, but that is a topic deserving of its own video. However, one thing that's clear is the fact that as Utena enters the forest and eventually reaches the dueling ring above, she is bewildered by the many absurdities to which she bears witness. Like any normal person, Utena wonders what the deal is with the castle floating in the sky. However, Saionji is content at seeing it as a sort of illusion, though he too clearly does not understand it. Similarly, we see Utena's shock at Saionji's identical rose crest ring, the fact that Anthy is present, and the rules of the duel. The greatest shock to Utena is the fact that Saionji and Anthy's relationship is not natural, but part of some sort of strange system with various rules and formalities. In contrast to the naive Utena, Saionji is an individual who has accepted and internalized the rules of the system without thinking critically about them. However, Utena herself takes little time to adjust to the absurdities surrounding her, reassuring herself that she just has to win the duel. And so the first duel begins. Saionji's comments during the duel highlight the basic struggles that Utena is to face throughout the show, constantly at odds with convention as a girl who became a prince. This and Saionji's shock that Utena doesn't even know the Sword of Dios all points to the fact that Saionji's main role in this episode is setting the stage and introducing the world within a world that is the inner circle of Otori Academy. Appropriately titled When, Where, Who, Which, the song for this duel also concerns introducing the setting of the show. There are obviously a multitude of interpretations for these lyrics, but I like to read in the concept of death and rebirth shared by Buddhism and other systems of belief, an idea crucial to the structure of the series as a whole. This topic deserves its own video, but for now, let me just say that cycles are very important to Utena, with larger and smaller cycles, and meanings to be found, both within cycles and in the changes apparent between cycles. Let's get into the lyrics. When, where, who, which. When, where, who, which. What is the setting of the events that we, the audience, as well as Utena, are bearing witness to? Well, this song is about to tell us. A flow of blood in the folds of memory, from the cradle of the millennium. This flow of blood could refer to Utena herself, or many of the characters for that matter, still naive in this life but constantly reminded of a ghost-like past. Cycling through infinite lives eternally, our current struggles echo those of the past, but we remember no details, only retaining a vague familiarity. Myself, an actor, so to speak, eternal, a sphinx in the winter desert, the mortal body's tragic wind, you know it well. A holy actor, so to speak, eternal, having fallen to the pits of hell, dark light, Marginaux. Utena is an actor, eternally performing a sacred ritual of revolution and resolution, placed in a world that seems antagonistic to her in almost every way possible. She is a force of good, a dark light in the sense that she is different from her surroundings, but also represents hope. The French word marginaux can be translated as fringe elements, which perfectly describes the revolutionary force that is Utena. There may not be a meaningful result to her actions. The Sphinx, a creation of a once great pharaoh, simply sits crumbling in the desert, representing times past and gone, like Ozymandias. However, there is meaning in her actions. Shine and burn, cool down and sing, born in this world, born in an instant, again and again. This is the meaning of the entire show, or one of the various meanings, and perhaps the meaning of life as well. We all have struggles that we make central to our lives. To approach these head-on is an act of love, an eternal repetition of reminding ourselves what love is, what it feels like to be alive, and perhaps forgetting all over again. This is Utena's revolution, which takes place in every episode, as well as cycles large and small throughout the entire series, an eternal reaffirmation of the truth of reality, which is love. But more on that in a later episode. Saionji is a perfect character for introducing the various absurdities of the cosmology of Utena, as he's not particularly interesting on his own, but can be interpreted as a simple soul corrupted by the system he takes part in. This is not to say that Saionji doesn't progress as a character later on. I myself am partial to the soft side of Saionji's personality. In contrast to Saionji, who has been corrupted, Utena herself is truly naive to the various evils surrounding her, and seems to have a hazy sense of déjà vu. It suffices to say for now that Utena's initial duel with Saionji primarily exists to set the stage for future revolutions to come against stronger opponents. Unlike Saionji, whose great sword of Dios loses to a wooden nub, Toga, creepily watching the duel, literally has his eye on Utena, marking him as the primary antagonist of the first arc. There's a lot more to be said about the first episode of Utena, but I wanted to focus on the elements which are mostly contained within this episode. Repeated motifs such as the spiral staircase and the mysterious power of Dios could take up an entire video on their own. Please let me know what you thought about my ideas in the comments or elsewhere. This is my initial attempt at an analytical video, so I'm still figuring things out. but if it helps to contribute to serious discussion of revolutionary girl utena in any way, I will consider that a success. Thanks, and see you next time.